Rad Magazine, the voice of medical imaging and clinical oncology. For 50 years, Rad Magazine has been the leading publication in its field and has a wide and influential readership. Rad Magazine works in partnership with AXREM, offering members reduced rates on RadLink. Check out your members' document in your weekly newsletter. And it is also the proud sponsor of the UKIO AXREM Drinks Reception. Find out more about Rad Magazine in the link in the show notes. Welcome to AXREM Insights, developing healthcare through medtech and innovation. Join Melanie Johnson and Sally Edgington as they talk with our industry leaders and experts.
Hello, I'm Melanie Johnson and I'm here with Sally Edgington. Today we have the pleasure to be speaking to both Chris Lawman, Patient Monitoring and Accessories Modality Manager at GE Healthcare, and also AXREM's Patient Monitoring Special Focus Group Convener, and also David Britton, Patient Monitoring and Life Support Marketing Manager at Mindray, and AXREM's Patient Monitoring Special Focus Group Vice Convener. So welcome both Chris and David, and thank you for being on the show today. Now let's get started by handing over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your story.
Thank you, Mel. So my name's Chris Lawman. I am the Patient Monitoring Manager for GE Healthcare, and I cover Northern Europe. I've only recently just been appointed the Northern European role. I've been with GE Healthcare for coming up to 28 years now, where I started off with a company that was called Marquette Helliger, and we were acquired by GE back in 1999, 2000. And as you can imagine, over those 20 odd years, I've had quite a number of roles, but I spent the large part of my time in GE Healthcare in service, where I used to obviously repair equipment. But then I went into more the IT side of things. So I used to help train and design networks for our equipment that go into the hospitals. And then, it's been the last 10 years where I actually moved over to the sales side of the business, working on patient monitoring, focusing on just patient monitoring.
So you're obviously enjoying it if you've been
there 10 years now in that particular area. I think that's the thing that sort of really helps. I'm really passionate about it. Many of those years, David and I worked together. We collaborated a lot on certain products, and I think we both had a similar approach to the business. We had a passion, we had a desire, and I think that's what keeps us going.
And David, obviously we were fortunate to have you on our show. I think it was Series 1, Meet the Team. So obviously it was nice to see you then, and it's great to have you back on. So thank you and welcome. So again, if you just want to give us a little bit of a highlight about obviously your background, and I suppose I'm going to ask you just an extra question actually, just a key moment in your career. What was that? What was kind of that highlight moment that really stood out?
I spent all that time with Chris. I spent 20 years working with Chris. So,
exactly.
that's got to be the highlight, surely.
I prompted the question, Dave.
it's beautifully done. I will come back to that one. But honestly, I enjoyed my time at GE. I had 28 years at GE, so that was good fun. I'm the modality manager over at Mindray, where we supply solutions to the NHS and private sector. And like Chris, you love it. Once you fall into healthcare, it really is something special. Yes, there are challenges, and there are challenges every day. But it honestly is delivering for your customers, ultimately for the patients. That just gives you an absolute buzz. One career highlights. I love what I do now, and I love what I've done in the past. But in between, there was a hybrid theatre environment which I absolutely adored. So I had a really good time in the imaging sector. So for me, that was developing a totally new area of the market, and that was great fun.
Yeah, and I think our industry is about the people, and whether that's the staff or the patients. So it is a people industry. So I absolutely get that. And I can see there's a real passion from our members, very ethical people that want to do an ethical job that can, indirectly or directly make a real difference to people's lives. So I think for our listeners, it'd be really good for them to get a bit of a understanding of the special focus group, so the patient monitoring special focus group, and also the manifesto, which we launched back in June 2024 at EBME Expo. And I know that I remember, David, us sitting there, we came up with the 4 Cs: consistency, connectivity, care, innovation, and cash savings. So I wondered actually whether, Dave, you want to talk a little bit about the manifesto, because I know you were quite instrumental in helping write that. And then, Chris, if you want to talk a bit more about the special focus group and what the kind of priorities are. So should we go to Dave first?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, and it was important because we had to give a sense of direction for the group, and to say who we were, so all those stakeholders externally and internally knew what we were about. It's interesting, as time goes by, some take priority over others, and I think within the industry at the moment, connectivity is certainly one of those key elements that we really focus on, and how we release that innovation into the market. There is certain, all our members have wonderful solutions, and we need to work with the NHS and the influencers there to release the potential of what we can offer, because we all tend to sell a dream, and then it's delivering on that dream and releasing the potential to all our customers. So honestly, the manifesto still stands. It is still very relevant, and I'm delighted that Chris has sort of taken on the mantle for this and to push it forward.
Well, it's great that you laid the foundation, David, with the team, obviously, and you know, I couldn't have put it better in terms of the 4 Cs in what you're focusing on. I've already said that, you know, I worked in connectivity in my role for quite some time. So the connectivity element has been, you know, a huge part of my life and a huge passion for me. And, you know, it showed that with the voice that AXREM has, that we had the ability to write the document that we sent to the government about connectivity, about going back to basics. You know, the obviously there's the mantra with the NHS right now of big data and artificial intelligence, but you know, we need to get that data to where it needs to be, and you know, the NHS needs to try and get back to basics and provide us with those networks in theatres and in the locations where they're needed. And you know, without AXREM, we wouldn't have been able to get that viewpoint across on the basis that it comes from all the vendors that have a vested interest.
Absolutely. And just to highlight just a couple of things that are some of the shocking figures, actually. But first of all, in terms of the 4 Cs of consistency, it's about talking as one NHS. And I sound like a broken record these days. We talk about one NHS, we've got all the individual trusts, and it adds a lot of complexity because they're not quite aligned. And obviously that's what, as an industry, we would like to see one NHS. In terms of care innovation, these figures shock me that the UK has one of the lowest numbers of hospital beds per 100,000 population compared to similar sized countries. So for the UK, it's 2.43 hospital beds per 100,000 people. In France, it's 5.7, so over double. And in Germany, 7.8, so triple per 100,000. So not having enough beds can lead to high bed occupancy rates and workflow issues. And then in terms of the connectivity piece, investing in connectivity is vital to transfer meaningful data to clinicians to improve the patient outcomes. And I would urge people to read the manifesto, because there are some clear kind of calls to action on the back page around streamlined processes and procedures, internal hospital stakeholders working towards a common goal with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. We want trusts to unlock the potential of their current equipment. You know, a lot of the equipment can do a lot more than what it's being used for. So while they've made that investment, use it to its maximum potential, and, you know, be able to have more data around how your patients are, you know, their vital signs are performing. And then cash savings, increase efficiency of workflows will support improved outcomes, early mobilisation of patients, and cut waiting lists, which is one of the government's key things, is to cut waiting lists.
Honestly, and you look at the elective surgery data still, it's up at 7 million folk waiting for their operations, which is huge. And I know that that's still the backlog from COVID, but that needs to be cleared. And you're spot on when you talk about early mobilisation of patients, because that's what's going to help here. Longer term, and I know this isn't new, but we speak about the ageing population within the UK, and that's still relevant. So it's the situation is only going to sort of worsen. So how do we look after those people? How do we keep them safe? And it's that joined up thinking between hospital and the social care element, and how do we join those two together? There's so much there. I think we all love the NHS, and we want it to work, but there are so many elements that need improvement, and gosh, we hope that we're working as part of that to bring better solutions.
Yeah, there's a frustration, isn't there, because it touches all of us.
Yeah,
I know that we've all been touched personally by the requirements of what the NHS delivers. So you've kind of got a double vested interest in it, in terms of what it can deliver for your family and your friends, but actually how professionally you can assist, those caregivers and ultimately those patients. It's and again, that comes back to the passion and why we do our job.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I know we've obviously had conversations, and obviously looking further ahead and horizon scanning, I want to talk about what's next for the special focus group. And like I say, I know our conversations have been very based around trying to encourage our members to engage a little bit more on any challenges and key topics, which we can obviously look into further. So if you can just kind of go into that a little bit more, and obviously why it's important as well that we do really encourage our members to speak out.
I've kind of already touched on the point that, AXREM gives us a voice. It gives us that ability to get a collaborative approach. We've all got a vested interest. We're all in the same boat in terms of some of the challenges that are presented to us from working with, the likes of the NHS. So, one thing that we really need to drive is to sort of further work on that collaboration. What we've got to remember, it's an ever moving industry. There's things changing all the time, whether that be technology, whether that be the government, whether that be funding. There's all these different factors that impact us within industry. So it's very difficult to try and put a subject in terms of what we're going to focus on next, because we don't know necessarily what's going to come along. There's some obvious ones that we've been working on in the past, like the challenges around, again, interoperability, the technology, the famous DTAC forms that we have to fill in, and these kind of elements that cause us all the same kind of challenge. But to be able to pinpoint something that we're going to focus on next month or the month after is really, really difficult. And this is where we really need the members of the special focus group to bring those subjects to our attention, to bring them to your attention. If they think that it's obviously competitive, or you've got some competitive challenges because of, we're all businesses working in the same sort of area, then come out to you guys, reach out, ask the questions before bringing it to the special focus group and talking about it in an open forum. But we're here to listen, we're here to work on it if we can, and we're waiting to hear what the members have got to say.
And I think it's really nice as well, because we are quite a small team, we can be very agile, and I like to think that we are building that real sense of community as well. So hopefully people do feel comfortable to speak and have those conversations, whether it's with us personally as in AXREM or within a special focus group. So like I say, any point anyone can reach out to us. We're happy to have those conversations and raise those, because I'm sure if one person's having a particular challenge, somebody else will be. So, and that's what we're kind of noticing more and more.
I agree entirely with that. It is giving everybody the ability to feel comfortable to speak, and it's honestly that you've got it spot on when you say that if you bring up a topic, it will affect more than just your good self. So it's okay to bring it up, because there are so many. Gosh, go back to DTAC again. It was always a fear. Should we bring it up? Should we? Everybody had challenges with it, but guess what? It's an industry challenge. So if it's an industry challenge, let's get it sorted. And I love what AXREM has done and given us that voice. So yeah, fully.
And it's a safe space, David. It's a safe space to come and open up and talk about it. And if we feel we can't do anything about it, we'd probably talk around that as well.
Spot on.
And I think as well, when we're horizon scanning to kind of what's next for the SFG, what's your kind of thoughts on one of the main pledges of the Department of Health and Social Care is hospital to home, so hospital to community. So what's your kind of thoughts on wearable patient monitoring devices, virtual wards? Because I think that's definitely going to be something that we will work on moving forward. And I think there'll be a lot more emphasis on that as well.
I think it's a really important element, because we have to adapt to the needs of the industry as well, or the hospitals, and that moving people to home, caring for people at home, so that you're stopping people actually moving back into hospital. So if they had need, stopping that need for acute care, because guess what, you made an early intervention, or making sure that people are early mobilized so they can get home. That's really important. It will help with the waiting lists. It will help us all get the care that we need for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for the public in general.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the hot topic right now. I had the benefit this week of attending the Association of Surgeons, Great Britain and Ireland, and it was a massive factor for the surgeons. Obviously, they have to look after their patients during their procedure, but obviously they've got a vested interest in their recovery. And their recovery period is hopefully a short time in the hospital environment, and then a lot of it is obviously once they've gone home. And so it's huge in terms of what can be done from a home health perspective. I sometimes sit back and think, how is it handled? How, if we've got a lot of equipment, if we've got a lot of patients in the home, in the field, that are utilizing equipment, how is it triaged? How is it handled from a I don't know which caregivers look after them, and who sends the ambulances, and does it fall under primary? Does it fall under secondary care? A lot of challenges out there.
Yeah, and we were recently talking about that at our medtech conference, and there's that divide between primary and primary care and social care, and obviously they have separate budgets, so they're kind of ring fence, but treating people at home is always better for the patient. I've been in hospital a lot in my life, and I would much rather be at home recuperating than in a hospital bed where the wards are noisy, there's lots of beeping, probably your machine's beeping, and
our machines beep very quick. A lot less beeping nowadays.
But yeah, and also it's better for the families in terms of having to travel backs and forwards and managing their work and other commitments, but it's also better for the taxpayer, and actually that is why this is such a focus for the government. And I think that you can see that this government want patients to have more choice and and decide more about their care, and absolutely that's the right approach, because we are very patient focused, and industry is in patient focused is what the government are, which is great. So I think that a lot of our messaging is quite aligned to the government, and I think that next month in June we will be seeing the 10-year plan and the spending review, and I think it'll be quite interesting to see what those focuses are. And obviously as AXREM we will be scrutinizing it with a very, very close eye and seeing what is relevant to our members. And that will help guide you, Chris. I think when you develop this group, we'll see some key focuses come out of that and work that we'll probably want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got some sort of immediate sort of challenges coming up in terms of understanding how the NHS is going to be set up with NHS England now, with all of those changes, and we're kind of yet to see how that's going to pan out. But you're absolutely right. We have to look at the bigger picture here. and see what, how that's going to impact us, but actually how we can adopt those changes and help our customers at the same time.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the abolishment of NHS England and integrate it into the Department of Health and Social Care, obviously that was a previous model. This model may look different, and I think it's important to understand, and it's got to be executed really well. But if it is, it will take out another layer of complexity. So I'm hoping that this plays into our asks and our 4Cs, and that we are more consistent. So I hope that that's what happens. I think it's going to be a tricky few years. When the government made the announcement, they said it was going to be 2 years. I think that's quite ambitious. But equally, you have to feel for a lot of people that work within NHS England in the function there that, they don't know whether they've got a job in 2 years' time.
Exactly.
So I think for us that, we've been working really closely with a lot of NHS England colleagues who have been fantastic and we've had really good engagement with. And I hope those people are retained within this process. But I think the uncertainty could affect our engagement, and that's really important as a trade association that we don't lose that. So that'll be my job to make sure that we have that consistency with our communications with the Department of Health and NHS England whilst it exists.
Good. Yeah.
So I'd like to now ask you sort of more broader what you think the benefits of being involved with the special focus group and AXREM more widely. So if we start with you, Chris, first.
Yeah, I think I've already sort of mentioned a part of it. The fact that we've got the whole sort of industry represented within the special focus group. I couldn't tell you the number. How many businesses are represented in the special focus group right now, Sally? Within patient monitoring, was it 12, 14 of us, something like that?
I think so. You carry on talking and I'll tell you how much many it is in just a second, because you've put me on the spot now.
Yeah. but it goes to show that there's so many people that have come to the special focus group that they see the value in it, and the fact that we've got that collaborative approach, as I've already said. It's a flexible moving industry. It's ever changing, and therefore, the different partners that we have within the business really want to understand what's going on. I think it gives you, in a strange way, that little bit of peace of mind. You're not a lone wolf when you're looking at these certain challenges. I think David alluded to it earlier. Do we bring this subject up? Have we got to talk about this? But actually, it comes back to sharing is caring, doesn't it? It's nice to say that I could sit in the corner of a room, have a chat with somebody, and actually they understand exactly what we're going through, and then you can share those anxieties and whatever way it impacts you. But as I've already mentioned it, the voice, the fact that you've got these great contacts with various members of the government, various different bodies that allow us to get our point across. It was fantastic last year to come to the Houses of Parliament to one of the launches there, and actually get time to sit and speak to some of the MPs about some of our challenges. So it's just that voice and that collaboration, I think, that helps us.
You can continue the quiz now and ask me the question.
Your starter for one, Sally, is
13 companies. We have 13 companies 14, in there. You were not too far off. And what I would also say as well is I think that the group it's obviously still quite a young group within AXREM. So I think we will see much more. Definitely not you guys. Don't worry, we'll ask you back again to do a podcast. You can get your own back, but no, I think as well it's really good that we have, like, for instance, NHS supply chain attend a lot of the meetings, and we're really trying to be quite collaborative, and that is key in all of AXREM's work. And I think when we've got a younger group within AXREM, that's going to be key to kind of pushing the visibility of the group, the work that you guys are doing. Obviously, we're we're working quite closely as well with EBME. I joined there in all, I think it was called an EBME Leaders Forum, and I've got another meeting coming up, kind of representing you guys within that forum. That was really interesting, and I took quite a lot away from that. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of collaboration to do going forward. So over to you, Dave. What do you think are the kind of benefits of membership of AXREM?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on a lot of them already, but for me, it's sort of affecting meaningful change. So as an organisation, it's able to represent the industry with all those key stakeholders, the people that are making decisions. If they're making decisions with only one side of the discussion, then not everything is going to get implemented. So it feels like a much healthier environment if the people that are supplying a lot of the services to the NHS are able to be part of that discussion and affect how the NHS is developed. You know, see what's realistic, see what isn't realistic, where we can support, and still within that competitive environment. So nothing's lost from the competitive edge, but you're getting that industry voice, and I think that's really important. And some of the stuff I've loved, like Chris, the Houses of Parliament, and seeing that government were interacting with AXREM, but also at a local level. If it wasn't for your initiative, say, hey, why don't you go out and get your local MPs involved? Honestly, on a local level, that's worked really well, and it's great. So that engagement, meaningful change, it works for me.
Great, thank you.
Super. Right, so I'm just going to kind of lighten the mood slightly now and go on to my quirky question, as I always do. Okay, so if you had a time machine, would you choose to go back in the past or go to the future, and why? And
gosh,
David,
really
I'll go
unfair.
to you first.
Right, okay. Here we go. I do like music, and I do like live music, and I think I may have said in my earlier podcast that I have an earworm of the moment, which is a band called Pete and Diesel. So I went to see them up in a festival in Scotland recently. However, if I could have a time machine, I'd love to go back to Woodstock, to be quite frank. I think I'd love to see Woodstock and be there at Woodstock, and maybe with a clearer mind than most people there, but you know, we'll see.
I swear, Dave, that you must be getting a proportion of royalties for this group, because you mentioned that last time too.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's true, can't help it.
They're family friends, really, aren't they?
It's absolutely true.
You get royalties on the tickets.
Brilliant, thank you. Super. And Chris, over to you.
Mine was going back into the past, but mine's perhaps a little bit boring because I didn't come into this industry until I was 27 years old. And the more I've learned through working in this industry, I really wish that I'd have been able to get into it a little bit earlier. When I left school, a spotty teenager that didn't really know what direction to go in, you know, I ended up working in the supermarkets, working in the pubs and all that sort of thing. I didn't really have any clear direction until, you know, I really kind of joined Marquette Helliger and then subsequently into GE. I wish that I'd had the clinical background, or I'd done, you know, biomedical engineering or something like that from school. I really do. Plus, you know, going back to when I was sort of 16, 17, 18 years old, I'd be able to still hold a cricket bat. I'd still be able to play cricket instead of being, you know, half crippled in a chair at home, you know, in the corner on a Sunday afternoon watching the football. You know, I'd love to still been out there playing a bit of sport. But yeah, I think that's my one.
You've got a much more wholesome outlook on life than I have, by the way. That's wonderful. Well done. You make me look as if I'm in the shallow end. Not
at all. Not at all, David. Not at all. Yeah, you know, it's funny, isn't it? It's just, I guess if I'd have probably thought about it a little bit longer, I'd have come up with something maybe a little bit more lighthearted. But no, I do. I love my job. I love what I've done. You know, how much longer I've got left, who knows, before I, you know, hang up the laptop as it is these days. But no, I think I'll tell you what I saw the other day, right? And it's changed my perspective. So at the Association of Surgeons, they have all these different sort of stands, obviously. And I love watching the old medical programs. And they had some of these areas where you could go and play, where you actually practice doing sutures. And I actually had a go, and oh my God, I've got this even more utmost respect for these surgeons. When they are, sewing things up that are millimeters thick, I couldn't even judge the depth, let alone trying to pick up the needle, then trying to turn it into the right position. It's insane how clever these guys are.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I've had 17 maxillofacial operations, and some of my surgery was very intricate. Thank God the surgeon didn't have the shakes, because mine, people generally wouldn't know I'd had all that surgery other than my lopsided smile. But I absolutely agree, and I actually resonate with you a lot, Chris, because I'm not from a clinical background. I left school not knowing what I wanted to do, with absolutely no qualifications at all, and I got into this by accident 11 years ago, into healthcare and trade associations, and I just got it just clicked with me. So I was a lot older than you were when you were 27, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah,
and when you were saying you don't know how long you've got left, obviously being only 28, I'm sure you've got lots of years left.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out the numbers now, actually.
There you go. And I'm actually going to ask just a follow-on question to that. How do you think AI will shape healthcare in 50 years' time? What does 50 years look like with AI?
What a question. I mean, you can see it already coming in now, can't you? Automatically detecting organs within ultrasound, and, products being able to communicate with each other and do decision making for us. This is the early stages in healthcare of AI. 50 years time, it's quite scary to think about where technology is going to take us. It's a tough question, Sally.
But in patient monitoring, what could, I mean, you imagine the data that's collected, like, especially from an AI perspective, obviously an algorithm is built by data. Your machines collect probably more data than a lot of medtech products. Can you imagine how that data could be used to improve workflow, patient experience, diagnosis, and so that I can imagine. That's why I asked that question to you guys. In radiology, AI is probably one of the more advanced areas, but in patient monitoring, it's probably not as advanced. So I just wonder, what would be that blue sky thinking of what AI could do for your patient monitors?
I would say, I think you're right. Big data. Again, we come back to connectivity. We're talking big data. I think from machine learning and understanding all of the data that happens with patients, primarily post-surgery, it's probably going to be looking at all of those results and linking them to pre-surgery. What was the patient like pre-surgery? What was the condition? What were they facing? And actually seeing some trends there. Well, actually, when we saw this before, this is how we looked after this patient, and the outcomes were perfect. Whereas sometimes, I'm not saying it's guesswork by far. These guys are very, very clever people. But actually, the data is going to secure a little bit of confidence in people in terms of actually how they look after patients through their, perioperative sort of journey.
I agree, and it's early intervention as well. So the more time that people are monitored, before, post, that's really going to aid with their care. Early intervention does save lives, and that's going to be helpful. But honestly, longer term down there, you just look at Skyfi, and they've got so much right, So we're all going to be in scanners, get stuff done, get out, and it's all going to be done in day surgery. But that's a long way away. But
absolutely. When I think of what a mobile phone looked like 20 years ago and what it looks like today, obviously it's become smaller. It's now, you don't need a camera because you just have your phone, and it is very scary to think what's 10 years, 20 years down the line. But I think it's only going to help create efficiencies for the NHS with workforce shortages, etc. It's only going to be a good thing. So I'd like to thank you both for being on today's show, Dave and Chris. I think we've learned loads more about you guys, but also about the patient monitoring special focus group. So a big thank you to Chris and David for joining us, and thank you to all of our listeners. years.
Join Sally and I again next week when we will be speaking to Chris Taylor and Anu Hutasari about the AXREM Sustainability Special Focus Group. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe or feel free to share the podcast with friends.